This episode is all about kumquat, the winter fruiting citrus that adds evergreen leaves and a dash of drama and orange to your winter garden. A gorgeous citrus that is ornamental as well as a lot of utility for cooking. Hi, I'm Robin, and I've been filming, painting and telling stories about my small permaculture garden over the last year on YouTube. The kumquat plant is the smallest citrus and is highly prized as an ornamental. It grows really well in containers, and you'll often see it on balconies and as an ornamental feature of a garden. I feel it's often very underrated as an edible. It's often because people peel off the skin and then find the fruit very tart. It's worth knowing that you eat the skin and the fruit together, and the sweetness is in the skin. The first time I came across kumquat in my life was actually decades ago when I was at school, and an enormous kumquat tree used to sit all alone in the middle of my school courtyard in a very grey school environment, and at certain times of year you would just notice it full of beautiful colour and fruit. Unfortunately, in that era, nobody had any sense of what to do with the plant, and it ended up as the fodder for children to throw fruit at each other. These days, though, the fruit has a lot of cooking application and use. The best way to preserve citrus is to not harvest it all at once, but to leave it on the tree until you need it. And that is true for lemons, Australian finger lime, and most other citrus. They last forever on the tree. That's if you're not got possums and other creatures that like a little bit of a munch. Kumquats actually have one of the shortest shelf life. It's probably another reason why you don't often see it in supermarkets or for sale at markets. Kumquats aren't particularly cheap, so here are a few tips on how to care for them. Ideally, the position should be sheltered and protected from the frost when young and against strong winds. The plant likes a good, well-drained soil, and if you've got a heavy clay soil, dig in some compost and that will help break up the soil. And it's best to plant in early spring or early autumn to avoid the extremes of winter and summer. If you're growing your kumquat in a container, rather than go to a very large pot, it's best to step up the container in size. And so a 26 centimetre diameter pot would be best planted in a 30 to 50 centimetre diameter container. Kumquats typically flower in summer and then develop fruit that ripens over the winter period. It's early winter, and my kumquat tree has a mixture of little buds, some green fruit, all the way through to some mature fruit that is sweetening up. We had a very long warm autumn, and I think the tree triggered to produce extra flowers and fruit, but straight into winter we are down to about minus 6.8 degrees centigrade a couple of nights ago, so some very cold nights, and we've been in the minuses throughout the last week or so. The buds are frost sensitive, and so some of those flowers might not make it to a fruit. Should I do anything about this? Should I be worried? And one of the things to know about kumquat is that it's quite a self-regulating plant. You don't really need to do anything, just let the tree do its own thing. Don't knock off the flowers, it will more than likely stimulate the tree to produce more flowers. And if you're lucky, you'll get fruit, but if not, enjoy the flowers. Kumquat performs best in a warm, temperate environment, Sydney or the northern coasts of New South Wales, for example. But it also does well in the cold, and it can survive down to about minus 10, but it will need frost protection when it's young. Caring for a mature citrus tree is a lot less effort than a young tree or a tree in a container or a pot. Some of the basic care that I do in this space is that I have a very close planting along this side of the fence, and I've got a mixture of Australian natives and fruit trees, and they're all competing in the same soil and area. Their roots are touching underground, and so I have to do a couple of things to give a full sun loving plant like this citrus a bit more light. And so I tend to prune the overstory away from the plant so some sunlight gets through. I also do some heavy weeding around the base. There's a lot of violets growing around the base, and they all take up moisture and nutrients, and so I do some regular weeding, or I do periodical weeding to give it a bit more advantage. Running the chickens through this space gives it the advantage of some random fertilizer. Citrus and chickens make great companions. So chooks are nature's weeders, and so they definitely either eat the weeds or scratch them up, and so it saves you a lot of labor if you can run them under the citrus trees. They actually make great companions because citrus loves a lot of nitrogen that's in chook poo as well. Because again there's high competition here, I also do a fair bit of watering in this space. I've got a dripper hose, although that's broken at the moment, so it's a bit more hand watering, and that's during periods of high summer or periods of dry. If I've done some pruning, I'll often just scatter big sticks down around the plants, and I'll mulch down all the smaller branches and use it back as mulch around the plant. And it creates a good natural cycle where the nutrients are going back into the soil and protects the soil layer from evaporation. You can usually tell if something's going wrong with the citrus. Its leaves will yellow, and that generally means it needs some fertilizer. I often will use a bit of worm juice, especially when it's fruiting, and that provides some fruit growing energy. And I also use some liquid feed as a different alternative, just to add some other things that might not come in. Most citrus don't require much pruning. You can prune them, you can even espalier citrus, but generally they grow in a nice bushy shape, and so you don't need to do too much in that area. While there's occasional munching of leaves, I find the kumquat far less susceptible to insects than, say, the lime and the lemon tree. Last summer, the lime and the lemon were both hit heavily with stink bugs, and it was just an outbreak that I got on top of by simply vacuuming the bugs all off. And I seemed to get the majority, and then they were gone for the season. I once came out and found all my kumquat skin had been eaten off all the fruit that was on the tree. That was a fair few years ago now. And it looked, because that's the sweet bit. But anyway, somebody ate it, I don't know who. It wasn't a human though, it was a creature. That's about one of the weirdest things I've seen. So yeah, generally a low maintenance plant that just needs the regular citrus care of fertilizer and weeding. While kumquats are quite tart, their flavour profile is not generally interchangeable with lime. I did discover on a recent trip to Vietnam that the Vietnamese will often use green kumquats interchangeably with limes as an essential ingredient in their dipping sauces, example for spring rolls. And so here's a Luc Nguyen recipe for dipping sauce where I interchanged kumquat and finger lime for limes, and it's delicious. These kumquat preserves were bottled a year ago. I hadn't ever made them before, and I'll let you know at the end how they turn out. I'm going to finish off with some beautiful art by 92-year-old artist Joyce and friends, and I'd like to thank you for watching all the way through to the end. Thank you for the subscriptions, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye. The verdict, delicious, very strong. Don't drive home after you've eaten one, and also cut the fruit up because it's too much in one hit, but well worth the wait.